On today's segment, we're going to tear apart a MacBook Air and also an Asus UX31A Ultrabook to see what makes them tick. Let's put on our goggles. It's time to go into lab.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Kay, Senior Editor at PC World. We're here in the PC World Lab today with Tony Leung, Manager of the Labs.
Hi, how's it going? Actually, I don't need these.
Today what we're going to do is something you shouldn't do at home. We're going to take apart a couple of ultra-portable laptops. Should we get started?
Absolutely, but you're going to put it back together.
Hey Tony, I see you've succeeded in taking apart the ZenBook. What did you think? Any problems?
It was pretty straightforward. I mean, we basically just need to make sure we have a T5 torque screw to take apart the back plate. Once we take apart the back plate, everything else was pretty easy. It's Phillips screws as well as flatheads, the battery pack. It was just clipped in with this little clip here, and you just pull it right off.
Right. It was kind of held in place by masking tape, wasn't it?
Yes, which was a little strange, but
right.
I guess it stops electricity from conducting to it, maybe.
Lots of little tiny screws too.
Yes. Yeah. So these were the T5 torque screws I was mentioning, and then these three right here were part of the battery pack, and these are just straight Phillips. And also the SSD drive right there from ADATA, that one definitely requires a Phillips screwdriver also.
A couple of interesting points about this. I don't think I'd want to, as a user, even if I was fairly sophisticated, replacing my own SSD because of this protective layer they put over the top of it. And they have this little thing that says warranty void if removed. The other interesting thing is the way the cooling system works. Here's the processor, my guess, and this is the CoreLogic chipset. And then connecting this to the fan is this curved heat pipe, which is kind of neat. There wasn't a whole lot of other things to assemble, right? This is pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't. I mean, except for the battery pack and the SSD, you really just can't get into the RAM to upgrade it itself.
Right, yeah, the RAM is probably soldered to the board, is my guess. This battery is a 50 watt-hour battery, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's a fairly substantial battery life. I know that from my experience with ZenBooks that the battery life is pretty long, so that's nice to have. Speakers are here. These are the little stereo speakers, I believe. And that's pretty much it. These are very simple and yet complicated at the same time.
Yeah.
Now it's time to disassemble the MacBook Air. I'm here with Lab Director for Macworld, Jim Galbraith.
Hey, Lloyd.
And we're going to take apart this system. Again, it's not something you should try at home, so let's get started.
Let's do it.
So Jim, any issues with taking apart the MacBook Air?
No, it was all pretty straightforward. Well, I guess the biggest issue is making sure you have the right tools.
Right.
It's got the pentalobe screwdriver, so it's not the Torx that a lot of things are used. So still kind of hard to find, but just make sure that you have one before you try, and you're not going to get far. You have to use it to get the case off.
Right.
So you'll find out pretty soon that you don't have the right tools.
Okay.
But after that, remove those 8, and then everything just opened up. Remove this cover that has the batteries in it, and
right, 50 watt-hour battery, similar to the Asus.
Right, so it's about 7 hours in the 13-inch.
What was interesting to me was the MSAT SSD seemed like it could be user replaceable if you were brave enough to open up the chassis.
Yeah, and that actually wasn't very hard to get to. And if you have the tool, then you could get one of those.
Right. And then you had some interesting things to say about the cooling fan.
With the Retina display MacBook Pro and with this, they're using this asymmetrical fan design. So the blades are at a bit of different angles, they're closer together and farther apart, and it spreads the sound across the spectrum to make it quieter overall. Right.
What was interesting to me also was that the Asus had cooling across all the chipset and the CPU, and this just has, it looks like, cooling on the CPU only. And then the Broadcom wireless networking chips here.
Right, and the RAM, you've got even deeper into it, is soldered in and soldered onto the back side of this board here. Right. Not user replaceable. Decide before you buy it whether you're going to use the 4 or 8 gigs of RAM.
Right. Okay. So how long did it take to disassemble the MacBook Air?
to this point, less than 5 minutes.
Okay, with the right tools.
With the right tools.
Right. And how long did it take apart the Asus?
A little under 10 minutes for mine.
Okay. So one of the interesting aspects of this is both the similarities and differences between the two systems. The circuit board, the main circuit board, is roughly the same size on both. The cooling fans are roughly in the same location. Some of the differences include Apple seems to cool just the CPU and not the chipset or the core logic, whereas Asus has heat sinks on both. The Macbook, it seemed to be a little bit easier to replace the SSD, only because Asus put a big sticker on it saying it was warranty void if you remove this. So I suspect that Apple's warranty department wouldn't be happy if you tried to remove it, but it seemed like they didn't go out of their way to point that out. Anything else you guys want to comment on in terms of unique features or issues with these?
More marker on the inside of that case.
Right, I think that's partly because they don't know who's going to service these, whereas these are almost always authorized Apple dealers.
Got it.
I think that's part of what's going on. The other interesting to me is the difference between the metal casings. The Asus seems a little thicker and slightly heavier, but I noticed that the cooling vents on the Air seem a little larger, so that's just some minor differences again. What's interesting is the differences and similarities. Modern ultralight laptop construction is surprisingly similar. Apple's maybe a little cleaner in some ways, but they're not tremendous differences between the two. So we're going to be doing more of this kind of stuff in the future, so please come back and check out our future PC World videos. We'll look forward to seeing you in the lab.